Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare weekly video podcast. My name is Rick Cini, episode number 18, kicking off the new year in 2016. Happy New Year to everybody, and again, thank you for watching the video podcast. On this podcast, we're going to have a couple of different topics that are interesting. Just a few hours ago, we posted that the airlines are having an airfare hike, so you can check that out as well. We'll have a discussion about that. We've got some bag fee things that are cooking as well. Also some TSA rumors about driver's licenses and not being able to get through security. We'll debunk that, and we'll also take a couple of questions from consumers. So joining me today is our editor from the site at FareCompare.com, Ann McDermott. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Rick. I know you like the questions from the listeners.
Yeah,
we always get some good ones. I thoroughly recommend listening to these podcasts for that. But I got some feedback myself I thought I'd share with you. This person told me that, the tips are excellent. They really, really enjoy them. And then they added that you and I are not ever going to be fashion icons. I just thought I'd pass that along.
Yes, that's true. I don't get up in the morning and get all dressed up for the video podcast. In fact, I don't do it hardly at all. But I should. I'll make that a New Year's resolution to get a little better grooming and.
I was included in this, pal. So don't feel bad.
Yeah, techie companies, they're not as hip as some of the other companies that are out there. But hopefully the content's is good, so you don't have to worry about what I look like, and the content will override anything that's an issue with whether or not we're hip enough. But certainly one of the things that we should talk about right away is we're sitting here on a Tuesday morning. Monday afternoon, Delta began raising fares up to $8 round trip. On shorter trips, it was less money than $8. On longer trips, it's up to $8. Then matched by Southwest later in the day yesterday, and just a few moments ago as we are doing this podcast, both United and American Airlines both matched. So that makes 4 airlines who control 80% of traffic matching. We also saw Alaska, who has some code shares with Delta, raise those prices on their code shares. So looks like this is probably going to be a sticky hike starting into 2016. I think you won't see very many hikes that stick here in 2016. We don't know if this one will be rolled back. Typically we know within a couple days, so we won't officially say that it's going to actually stick. But this means about a 0.5% raise. Let's put it in context, right? $8 times almost 2 million people that fly each day, 16 million a day. It'd be almost just under $500 million additional each month if this kind of hike sticks. So that puts it in context.
Well, I've got a question for you. Last year, the airlines made money. From what I understand, they made a lot of money.
They did. Great profits last quarter, the best quarter I think in almost their history. Yeah.
So why? Why are they hiking?
They can. I guess this is the point, right? So this is what their investors expect. They expect them to, pull in as much money as they can, and that's because demand in the U.S. clearly is likely, to support this kind of hike. At some point when you raise $1, some people quit buying tickets, and that's when airlines have to back off, which they've had to back off quite a bit lately. It's sort of interesting to me because we have seats completely full, and we have people shopping for spring break, and then business travelers are coming back, hitting the road, trying to start off 2016 and make all their plans and their bonuses and whatnot. So there's quite a bit of shopping going on this first couple weeks in January. I just got my spring break tickets yesterday, so we locked in there. And again, we did a Tuesday, Saturday trip so that we saved about 20 or 30% by picking the days. But basically, the U.S. economy, while it's barely pacing at inflation, people are still flying. I guess they have that extra money they're saving at the gas pump for the moment. The stock market's been sort of flat last year and had a really rough start at the beginning of this year. So we'll just have to see how things progress in the first couple weeks of the year, because these global indicators tend to actually push the U.S. economy in that direction in a much slower fashion. But at least the airlines at the moment think that consumers will be able to absorb some of these increases.
I just have a quick question. It seems to me that the last several hikes were directed pretty much strictly at business travelers who
Right.
obviously, for the most part, don't pay for their own tickets. Their bosses do. What's the case here?
Yeah, in this case, it's across the board. It includes what we would call leisure travelers, those people that buy 14 days or earlier. In most cases, we would call business travel 7 days and in, some routes 14 days and in, depending on whether or not it has a low-cost airline. So across the board, it also sometimes you'll see airlines only hike fares on the long haul flights, coast to coast, for example. But this was across the board, even on short haul flights. So really, and literally, I'm looking, at the reports that we get from our system that processes all the airfare. Several million airfares changing in the last 24 hours. So this is a pretty huge amount of change. And while the dollar amount's not technically huge, it's still a lot. And just remember, this kind of hike, $2 to $8, we have the government saying they want to raise the September 11th fee as part of legislation, which could raise it at least as much as $10, for example. So, I mean, these kind of things are not always airline generated. Sometimes they're generated by the taxation authorities. And we have the passenger facility charge, which is part of the fee. They want to up that as well. So look out down the road as we continue to have these sorts of things to fund these programs, and TSA, for example, and the airport's improvement programs, for example. And funding the FAA is also part of that, which also has a fee that's indexed that goes up each year as well.
And at the moment, you don't know if this is going to stick or stay, but
yeah, when Southwest is in, usually it sticks, right? So you have these, you have the Ford airlines that control 80%. If Southwest is in, it usually sticks. Sometimes when Southwest doesn't come along, it sticks as well. It depends on the city. Sometimes they tiptoe around Southwest, but my guess is it'll probably stick given the fact that Southwest jumped in right after Delta did, and then so I would expect it to, but we won't say for sure until we get a couple days into it.
Well, there's not much you can do in terms of avoiding a airfare hike, but there are some fees, particularly bag fees, that you can't avoid.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways that people have used to get around, bag fees. First of all, the funniest one that I've seen, and I actually saw a guy the other day with, stuff coming. He had one of those jackets that had 83 pockets on it.
Yeah,
was going through security, and he had all sorts of stuff, and I even saw he had a pair of shoes. I guess his girlfriend or spouse's shoes stuffed in one of them. So it's pretty amazing what people will do. I mean, clearly, there was a carry-on involved as well, so they were trying to get as much security as they could. I'm not recommending that, but for some people that seems to work.
Well, we saw a list of a bunch of clever ways to avoid bag fees from the Australian Herald Sun out of Melbourne, and
Right.
The Aussies are generally an inventive and clever lot, so it's not surprising that what you saw is one of the things they suggest. There was one fellow that he had carefully put on 3 pairs of pants. He had a pair of shoes stuffed in the jacket pockets, and he looked like a sausage, but he didn't care. He saved money.
That's one way to do it. In his case, he was probably on an airline that actually charged for carry-on fees as well. So, but they're not going to charge you for your jacket and what's inside your jacket. So, it's funny. At some point, they'll probably have to weigh those kind of things. But it is sort of. I haven't seen that very often, by the way. But there are some companies that sell some oddball jackets that let you do that, especially if you're in a city in Europe where basically there's hefty fees on anything you take on the plane.
Well, another person tried to bribe the gate staff to allow a carry-on. Apparently, the carry-on was too heavy to go through and had a big box of candy that he tried to give. Now, in years past, I've heard of things like this working. I've heard of people like getting upgraded to first class if they were dressed really nice, or like a modest bribe like candy or a bottle of wine, stuff like that. But that doesn't seem to go at all anymore.
Yeah, I think it may have been in days gone by, but I don't think I've seen that very often. I have seen, for example, a family send out their 3-year-old scout to try to, tangle up with a baggage police person as they skirted through with 3 carry-ons that they weren't supposed to have. So there's all sorts of clever ways that people, try to get around some of these baggage. And look, I don't blame people, really. Honestly, you're talking about, $50 round trip, a family of 4 or 5. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Well, I think there are ways to get out of bag fees. You tell people all the time.
Sure.
And the number one way is to pack light. Don't use a checked bag. Use a carry-on whenever possible, and pack light.
It's funny. During the holiday season, we have this thing called a raclette where everybody sort of sits around the table and you cook on top of it and you do cheese. It's sort of a combination grill/fondue thing, and we're chatting about the fact that we've converted one of our friends over to not ever checking a bag, and the other ones were like, oh, how could you possibly go the entire week? And they started talking about color palettes, and then everybody, all the men, switched to the side of the table and started talking sports. So so anyway, it didn't take long for that. They were figuring out how to actually pack lightly and making sure, and this is on trips, long haul trips, transoceanic trips, for example. So it can be done. I am definitely, we've converted several people. In fact, I think I converted you a couple of years ago.
Yes, you did. And I went to Europe for 10 days with a carry-on, and it was fine. You would be amazed at how much stuff you bring that you never use. Really, picture yourself in what you're going to wear every day, how many times you can wear an item. You'll be fine. And wear your heaviest stuff on the plane.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely come check out this. The article on the website has some clever ways that people have been getting around stuff. Clearly, the easy way is not to actually check a bag. There's several credit card programs, for example, that actually waive those fees. So there's all sorts of ways to get around it. But just remember, when you pay a fee to get rid of a fee, you have to figure it out, like credit card fees and whatnot. So if you're paying a yearly fee, that you have to check that out as well. So come check out that particular article. And then, I noticed I got actually asked this question on a couple radio interviews the other day about this rumor that TSA is going to basically disallow in some locations the driver's license from being used at the security checkpoint. I think you actually did you give our contact over there at Homeland Security a ring and check that out?
It's like all over the official websites. And first of all, regarding this whole story, I want to point out right away, don't blame the TSA for any of this. Your congressmen and women voted for this. It's called the Real ID Act, and the whole point, and this is one of the post 9/11 legislation that was passed. It's the Real ID Act in 2005, I believe, and it's basically to try and avoid fake driver's license, which are not impossible to make up
I'm
one.
positive there's many of them, yeah.
Well, anyway, they've got these restrictions, or new restrictions on driver's license for all the states, and apparently something like 7 or 8 or 9 states have not complied with this. Some are in the process of complying, and they've asked for extensions. Others are saying, it's a privacy matter, we're not going to do it, so the heck with you. Or something like that.
I'm sure it's a little more colorful language than that.
Well, it was supposed to go into effect sometime in January, and everybody was saying, oh, you're going to need a passport to travel with, or you're going to need this or that, because your driver's license won't be accepted. And that may be true eventually, but Homeland Security is saying all over their website, and same with TSA, that when this happens, we're not going to leave passengers in the lurch. We are going to publicize this and give you 120 days, 4 months, I think that's 4 months, in order to come up to speed. So it's nothing to worry about now. And there is alternative identification that you can use right now. And I know you've got some. You've got global entry, right? If you have that, you don't need to show a driver's
Right,
license.
I have a global entry card. If you get global entry, you get a little card. Usually, you would only take it if you were entering and exiting
Yeah.
Canada and Mexico. So when you're actually flying internationally, you don't need the card. You just put your hand on the little kiosk when you come back in, so they can take your fingerprints and answer a few questions. So. Yeah, so you don't need that. Now, getting into security, when you're going international, you're going to have to bring your passport anyway. So, no driver's licenses to Canada and Mexico for almost a decade now.
hmm Well, if you're very concerned about this and concerned about your state being part of it, please check out our post on this called Rumor Control TSA Driver's Licenses, or go directly to the Department of Homeland Security site. And you'll find out the information. And if you have a problem with anything that's going on, talk to your representative in Congress or your senator.
The thing I would know too is that, and we had to do this the other day. I didn't realize my daughter's passport was about to run out. So for those people that haven't used your passport in a while, check the date, because in some countries that you're going to with your passport, it's not just the date it expires. Sometimes it's several months beforehand that they won't let you into immigration.
There's a surprising number of countries that say you must have 6 months left on your passport upon your return. Now, that may seem like lunacy to you, but that's the rule, and they won't let you into the country if that's going to be the case, if you will have less than 6 months. A whole slew of these countries, so do check it out.
Yes, I did absolutely check that out. So it's interesting, even in 2016, as we roll into the new year, we're still having issues with IDs, right, and what we need to do with IDs and passports and whatnot. So let's keep on that trail. We'll keep following this story and making sure anytime TSA does announce that they're going to actually implement this, we will let everybody know. So I guess last up on the video podcast is a question. As I will always note, I don't actually see these questions ahead of time. I'm actually seeing it on my screen here for the first time. So why don't you fire away?
I will. It's from Sarah in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And she says, we're looking at spending the summer in Ireland with our family of 5, children aged 12, 10, and 8. And Sarah, I would like to come. She says, what would be our best airports to fly to and from? For example, would it make sense to get round-trip tickets to New York and fly from there instead of Chicago? We are limited to travel between mid-June and mid-August, but our travel dates and duration of stay are rather flexible. And when should we shop for tickets, and what should we expect to pay? Boy,
wow, we got the whole question set there.
And I really think she's in luck. So, but you go ahead.
Yeah, well, the good news is that Ireland, continually, and Dublin specifically, has been one of the cheapest locations in Europe, or transatlantic flights to fly, including the Nordic countries and Spain and Germany as well on that list. But certainly, Ireland is. A lot of that is historical too. You have Aer Lingus that flies from major airports like Chicago and the New York area, which has driven down the price into Ireland. So, and plus you have actually the Dublin airport has sort of a tax break. It's got about 70 quote unquote pounds cheaper than the London Heathrow airport. So let's start a couple things. The first of all is, when should I start shopping? You need to start shopping about 5 months ahead of time. It's a little early right now to shop for summer. You are going to be paying summer rates, which is the most expensive rates through June and August. So typically into Dublin, and it didn't say, does it say what city she's actually in? Here?
Well, Stevens Point, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
I guess Chicago. It's got to be Chicago.
Right. So it'd be, some people in Wisconsin could go to Minneapolis, depending on what part of Wisconsin you live in. Some could go to Chicago. If you want to fly from your local regional airport, typically it's about $100 extra. But here's a few tips. About 5 months ahead of time, a little early right now for June. But, I'd still kick the tires a little bit. For international travel, you have what's called midweek and weekend pricing. Weekends actually tend to be anywhere from, depending on the airline, $20 to $40 additional. If you want to go, and a weekend is loosely defined as Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you leave on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending, sometimes Thursday is considered to be a weekend. But if you leave on those days, it's cheaper. So if you can take your trip, you also, almost all the airfares have a Saturday night stay rule. So you have to stay at least 7 nights. And remember, leaving on Sunday and coming back on Saturday is not a Saturday night. And you want to spend, if you're going to take that long of a flight, which you're going to have anywhere from, depending, I guess, from that part of the country, if you were able to do a connection, you're looking at an all-day affair, somewhere in the 12-hour range, all in, including connection time, when you're all said and done. So that's going to chew up the entire day. You're going to be flying overnight, typically, when you leave, and then coming back during the day as you come back across. As far as, so those are the days you want to go. The days of the week, definitely go Monday through Thursday. You're looking at about $1,000 for summertime tickets right now. Now, other cities other than Dublin, like London, Paris, and Rome, would be closer to $1,500, and that's why we say it's cheaper now. I'm not saying thousands not a lot of money. Now, the other thing I would note too is that when you have children 12 and under, sometimes there's some discounting with international airlines, so you should make sure you put in, a lot of people just put in, would they say five adults? Go ahead and put that children ages in as you do that as well. So sometimes they do have some discounting. We see less of that than we used to, but sometimes you will see that. What was the other question we had there?
Is there a point in flying into Shannon, or should she just look at Dublin?
Yeah, Shannon doesn't have, I'm not even positive it has that many transatlantic flights at all, so you're going to be flying into Dublin. That's your best bet, and that's where the airport is cheaper. I think there's actually a couple that may fly into Shannon. But once you get to Ireland, if you want to hop off Ireland for a little excursion, Ryanair is based out of Ireland, and it has really inexpensive tickets to hop over, to really anywhere in a 2 or 3 hour flying radius, which would be about 1,500 miles of Dublin if you wanted to fly somewhere and check out a little side trip. So if you're taking a little bit longer trip, let's say an 8 or 9 day trip, you might want to sneak away for a little side trip. You can definitely check out Ryanair. Just remember, it's what you want to do is make sure you pack light, because airlines like Ryanair, while you'll get a free bag on some of the U.S. legacy airlines going over, it can be very expensive to check your bags and or carry on anything on Ryanair, for example. Yeah. So definitely pack light.
The fees can be for the oddest things that would never occur to you, like having your boarding pass printed out at the airport by the airport personnel. That can cost you a bundle. So if you are going to take a discounter in Europe, please check out.
And I'll give you an example. We went to Monaco last year, flew into to Paris, and then we took Air France on a separate ticket, sort of a side trip, because we stayed in Paris for a couple days. Ahead of time, I bought the tickets to Paris. I actually, in this case, on flights on Air France internally, most people wouldn't know this, but they actually won't let you bring your bag on board unless it's above, like, I think around 15 or 20 pounds. Almost impossible to do that. So you do have to check your bags, but if you prepay your bags, it's cheaper. Plus you have the prepaid check-in, so it's faster through the airport. Just check out some of the articles. We have some articles on this as well, but just be aware that your baggage becomes a big issue if you're going to do some side trips once you head over there. Trains are always great as well over there. Clearly, you're not going to take a train from Ireland to too many places outside of Ireland, but well, I guess you could in theory.
You know what you do in Ireland? You rent yourself a car and you drive, and
you drive around. But yeah,
it's a different side of the road. But you know what? It's easy and it's very nice.
Yeah, so done it a few times. Golfing there is unbelievable. At that time of year, the country is just absolutely beautiful. So I wish I was going with you this summer. That's last summer I was out at the Ryder Cup over in Scotland. So this year we're going to go. This coming year we're going to go to the Ryder Cup up in Minnesota. So that'll be fun for me later on this year.
And if anybody else has a question, and thank you, Sarah, for asking your question. It was a great one. If anybody else has a question, please send it to customer.service@faircompare.com.
Yeah, and also, Sarah, please come to the site. Go ahead and sign up for alerts. If you sign up for your city and maybe even one of the hub airports, Chicago or Minneapolis, whichever is closer, sign up for alerts. We'll actually send you a note whenever the prices start to drop. So that's another great way to keep in tune with what's going on as well.
You know what? One quick thing. Sarah wondered whether she should fly locally or from New York. I just wanted to say, and because you always tell me this, if she was going to fly from New York, she should get there the day before, right?
Well, typically I would do that if I was flying to Asia, right? I'd fly and stay on the West Coast and spend the night because it's such a terribly long flight. If you're going to New York, the only reason to do that would be as if you had some free tickets or something, some domestic tickets that were really cheap. But if you were going to do that, almost all those flights, at least going to Europe, are in the afternoon and overnight flights. Actually, from New York, they do have some day flights that actually arrive same day, but there's not very many of them. So I wouldn't so much stay necessarily in New York overnight in this particular case, but I would be very careful about buying a ticket on a low-cost airline and then buying a separate ticket or splitting your ticket purchase up on a legacy airline, because unfortunately if your other one's delayed or canceled or something and you don't make the other one and you have a connection, then you're sort of on the hook for your ticket. If you buy a through ticket, then the airlines will still accommodate you if they have a delay or something.
So where can people learn more about FareCompare?
Oh, wow. You just come to the website. We have all sorts of great tools onto the website. You can also catch me on ABC Radio. I did a bunch of radio shows this morning, abcnews.com, USA Today, Fox News a couple times a month for those. Come check out the website, sign up for alerts, and hey, if you're looking for spring break trips, this is the time to be shopping right now. Just booked ours yesterday. So people need to get in tune with those March and April kid break things that we need those trips that people have planned out there. So get out there and start shopping.
And if you need any ideas on great destinations, our app is great.
Yeah, the new Of Interest app is out. It's the brand spanking new one with a new interface for iOS. We're going to be updating Android soon, so be sure and download that. The simple thing, if you're on your phone, just faircompare.com/app, and it'll immediately take you to the page where you can download that from the individual stores, Google Play and the iTunes Store as well, App Store.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.